Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting 4 seasons flowers, and I'm sipping on some wild berry tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, fire red, Mars black, green oxide, deep yellow, fluorescent purple, and ultramarine blue. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I'm going to be using for some drawing, and I have 3 brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush, I have a number 10 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 6 round synthetic brush, and I refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same type and size canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting our background. I'm going to be using my large brush to paint, but I'm going to use my small brush to demonstrate mixing some colors. So I'm going to be going for 4 custom colors that will be a nice representation of each season behind the specific flower. So I'm going to do pink for spring, yellow for a sunshine summer, green is going to be the background for my autumn, and then I'll do a light blue for the background for my winter. So I've pre-mixed myself my 4 colors, and I'll show you how I got to them. Of course, I've got them out of order. It would have been nice if I put them in order on my palette, but this will be my light blue for my winter. How I got to that was I mixed ultramarine blue and white, and I just spun it together until I got a nice soft light blue color. So that'll be the color that I'll use as my background for winter. I think I need a little bit more white in that so it can be nice and light blue. There we go. And I'm going for just these nice pastel colors. So again, they just complement and represent the season, but they don't overpower. I don't want them to kind of steal the show away from the flowers, so I'm just using the soft colors. I'm just washing and drying my brush so I can show you the next color, which is pink. So how I got to that was I mixed red and white. So I'm not doing any complicated mixing for these colors. I'm really just mixing whatever the base color is. So this one was red. I'm just putting some white in it. I need a little bit more white so I can get it as light as I want. And then just making sure that I've got it as light as I want, and I spin it around enough so it is well mixed. My yellow is going to be just yellow and white. So again, I'm just going to wash my brush so I can go ahead and have a clean brush to demonstrate with. And again, this is just going to be a little bit of yellow and some white. So again, yours can be as light or as dark as you want. I'm just going for a nice kind of pastel-y type of look. And then you probably can guess how I'm going to get to the green. I'm going to go green with some white so I can get a nice light green going for my autumn side. So green plus some white and then just spin them together. And again, you can make it as light or as dark as you want. So once you have your 4 custom colors for your background for your seasons, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my large brush and I'm going to go left to right. So I'm going to have my my spring first. So I'm going to be using my pink. So I'm going to do about a quarter, 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 quarter for each color. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to eyeball about halfway between on the top, about halfway, and then I'll go about halfway between that and the edge of my canvas, right about here, make myself a little bit of a marker, and then do the same thing on the bottom. So somewhere about here. Doesn't have to be perfect, but that'll give you the quarter way. And then I'm just going to take my pink and I'm going to paint that entire section with the pink. I'm using a vertical paint stroke so I can get it to blend in with my next color, and I'm doing it this way so I can specifically just get the 2 sections so I don't have to do clean lines when it comes to each section. This is going to help me to just kind of naturally blend them into each other. So once I've got to my quarter way mark, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this as a soft edge. So I'm just going to take my brush and go back up and down so I almost kind of run out of paint and I left myself a nice soft edge as opposed to a bright edge. Now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to wash my brush. If I had a ton of paint on my brush, I certainly could, but I'm not going to wash it at the moment. I'm just going to pick up some yellow paint, the custom yellow, the light yellow. I'm going to mark myself about halfway at the top and about halfway at the bottom, so somewhere about here. And then since I have both colors on my brush, I'm going to start right here on the left-hand side and get this to cross over my pink. So this is how I'm going to get those 2 sections to blend in together. Now I'm just going to pick up my yellow and I'm going to continue to go to the right with my light yellow color. And this is I'm going to go all the way to my markers. Oops, I got a little clumpy thing there. And again, if this was, if you still had a ton of pink on your brush, you could certainly wash and dry your brush. You can go back over that little seam where they meet just to make sure that they blend enough. And then I just kind of keep picking up my light yellow until I get to my markers, and I'm going to leave myself a soft edge at those markers. So similar to how I did it on my pink section, which was just go up and down until you're almost kind of out of paint and you've got yourself a nice soft edge in through there. Then I'm going to do the same thing with my green. So now that I've got that, I'm going to, and again, if you were overloaded, you could certainly wash and dry your brush. I'm going to pick up my light green and I'm going to go right over that seam. So light green, right over this seam, just get them to blend in with one another. So I'm kind of rubbing it back and forth, up and down, a nice long continual brush stroke. That's looking pretty good to me. Now I just keep picking up that light. Oh, I got to mark myself. So we got to mark ourselves the quarter way between here and here. It's about halfway right there. I like to mark myself so I don't lose focus, because I would have probably just painted the whole thing if I wasn't careful. So I just added that light green, and now I am going up and down. I'm going to just make sure that it still blends in with my yellow, and then I'm going to go all the way to my markers. So light green, and I just again keep picking up that light green color, and I'm going to go all the way to those markers, and then we'll do the same exercise for the last color, which is going to be the light blue. So once you get this all done, you might find that you want to do a second coat on it, but just know we've got lots of flowers that are going to steal the show. So it's not entirely necessary to do a second coat, only if you feel that it is. Again, I'm leaving myself this soft edge over on the right-hand side. Now I'm picking up my light blue, and I'm going to get, I don't have to mark it because it's just the end of my canvas, and I'm going to go ahead and get these two to blend right in with one another. Just go right up and down these two colors on the seam, and that will get them to blend right in with each other. And then just keep picking up your light blue to finish out. And then we are going to be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got this section done, you can put your large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna draw an outline for our flowers. I'm gonna be using my piece of chalk. I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to guide you through a series of basic shapes to make these identifiable seasonal flowers. And then we're not going to do any fine-tuned detail. We'll just use these basic outlines for the coloring in process when we go to paint. So I'm going to start over on the left-hand side with my daffodils. So for me, I'm going to have two heads or two flowers representing the daffodils. On each section, I'm going to have the flower kind of overlap a little bit into the other section as if we're just going from one season to the next. So I'm going to, if this is about halfway up or down my canvas, I'm going to go a little bit above that, and I'm going to give myself an oval kind of shape that is a little bit tipped to the side. Then I'm going to give myself a little bit of, I'll call it like a long upside down bell type of shape for the underside of the flower, like this. And again, I've got it tipped a little bit. And then I'm going to put a whole bunch of long little petals coming off of it. So I'm going to, off the bottom. So I'm going to take this and just bring it down like this. I'll do maybe another one kind of coming over and through here. I'll do one in the front that's kind of sitting underneath these two. And then I'll do maybe one kind of along this back side. These flowers kind of, they have this bell and then these long petals that drape around, almost like a little skirt around them. So I'll do this one for my last one because you won't be able to see the one on the other side. And then I'm going to have another one up here that's going to be kind of tucked behind this one. So I'm going to go up in this vicinity and make myself another oval, but this one I'm going to make kind of going off my canvas a little bit. The bell would be kind of behind this corner of this flower. So I'm going to do this and then maybe bring this in like this behind there. And then I'll do a couple of little just petals or the essence of some petals maybe coming out like this. Because these would be just kind of tucked behind that one. So that's looking pretty good. So the next flower I'm going to do is a lupine flower. So these are really tall, kind of slender flowers, very pointy at the top, and they kind of bubble out down at the bottom. I'm going to do two. My first one is going to be the front one, similar to how I did this one, and it's going to be over to the right a little bit. So if this is about halfway up or down my canvas, I'm going to come maybe about almost halfway between here and the top of my canvas. So somewhere about here is where I'm going to start this one. And I'm bringing it all the way down to the bottom in through here. So I'm going to connect these with this just long kind of, almost like a super long teardrop type of a shape. So something like that. And then I'm going to have the other one set behind it. So the tippy top of it, I'm going to have over in through here. And I'm going to bring it down like this and kind of tuck it behind here. And then I'll come out right about here and bring this one up to meet this one. So that's all I'm going to do for those two. Then the next flower that I'm going to represent is mums. So these are like small round flowers that have a ton of little petals that are super close to each other. So I'm going to just make a big mass of circular shapes. So I'm going to just do an exterior first. So I'll start over in through here. I think I want to overlap this one a little bit. So like this, and then I'm just going to kind of make a whole bunch of, again, I'm overlapping into my next season. So something like this, making a lot of just kind of edges of a round object. So something like that. Now I can go ahead and make some on the inside. So if you want to make it kind of layered looking, what I like to do is make a couple that are going to be right in front as a full circle in the middle. So I'll do one here, and then maybe I'll do one in through here. And then all my other ones can kind of be partial ones aside of it. So if I take this one, I can kind of just almost connect those little guys. Maybe I can connect this little guy up in through here. I can do a partial one here, and they don't all have to be exactly the same size. You can just kind of connect a lot of it based on those front ones that you put in play. So it's kind of a little easy way to do a section of circles that look like they're layered. The next type of flower I'm doing is a poinsettia. So these have really large red leaves or petals. I think they're technically a plant, but we refer to them as flowers and plants for the holiday season. So they're these big, beautiful red leaves, petals. So I'm going to make a little center. I'm going to have two again. One is going to be here, and then I'll have a partial one up top. So I'm going to just make myself a little circle for a center so I know where I'm headed. And then they have these again, almost like teardrop type of shaped petals or leaves. So something like that and like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more that I feel are kind of going to be the stars of the show, nice in front of the other ones, or just going to have more detail. So something like this. So they all kind of come out from this nucleus, the center area. As I'm getting over towards the sides, I'm not going to really see much of that. So I'm just going to give myself a couple little marks so I understand when I go to paint it in what I'm going to be doing. So just going to kind of give myself little slivers over there, and then maybe a little piece kind of coming out behind those mums. And then up here, I'm going to have my center is going to be somewhere in this vicinity, and then I'll just give myself a couple of fun little petals coming off, something like this. Maybe we've got one like this and one over here, one over here, one over there, and then these ones over here, they'll again will get hidden or go off the canvas. And that's all I'm going to do. We're going to be using our medium brush for the next step, so you can put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base color for all of our flowers. I'm going to use my medium brush. I'm going to be using yellow, purple, and red. And we're going to do the daffodils in yellow, the lupines in purple, the poinsettia in red, and the mums in orange. I came back to that because we're going to make a custom orange when we get to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my daffodils. I've got some yellow paint on my brush. There's not going to be any fancy brush stroke, but what I am going to do is I'm going to leave the hint of my chalk mark showing around the edges, so that way, especially when I get into the parts that are crossing over one another, I don't necessarily need to leave the chalk on the exterior edges, but when I get to somewhere like this bell part where I know that it's crossing over or meeting another section of the same color, I'm just going to leave a hint of my chalk. So that way, when I do go to do the detail process of painting, I will know where all of my edges are. It's, you know, not entirely necessary, but we created this outline to assist in the shape of these petals and to help us give each section its own kind of identity. So during this process, if we want to not get confused in a future step, we just leave a little bit of that chalk. When you get to the exterior edge of your daffodil, you can certainly ripple the edges if you want to. Not entirely necessary, but it will add a little bit of a movement around those edges. And then I'm just going to go ahead with this yellow and paint in this other one as well. And again, just leaving myself a little bit of chalk. I'm wiggling the brush along the edge here so I can have just a little bit of movement around this kind of bell type of shape. And if you paint over your chalk like I did right there, and I didn't want to, just to leave a little bit of a separation between the two sections. So if it's not the chalk that's separating it, you can certainly utilize just whatever that background color is to assist you in separating two spots. And in through here, again, this is going to be a petal from the back flower, so I don't get myself confused, just leaving little slivers of space between those sections so I can see it in a future step. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush so I can do my second flower. So I'm going to be using my fluorescent purple for this one, and this one's going to get just a really messy textured type of brush stroke. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paint and give myself these little bumps along the edges of the flower. This one's going to be, I'm going to have this flower in front of it, so I'm just going to kind of skip over that. And then I'm just going to kind of give myself these little bumps along the edges. So I'm just bumping my brush out with the paint. And the inside, it's not going to matter on the inside of the flower, but as I'm on this outside, if I want to give it an iconic kind of look to this flower, I'm just going to go ahead and make those bumps. And then on the inside, I'm just going to kind of tap my brush like this to give me a nice texture to it. And again, this will help to assist in the realistic look of the flower. And then when I get to this one, I'm going to do the same thing, only when I get to this part, I will kind of skip it a little bit, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So again, just taking my brush, giving myself these little bumps along the edges. And if your flower grows a little bit at this point because you're bumping these out, you know, farther than your chalk mark, that's okay. And if your chalk mark still shows through around the edges, don't worry about that, because when your paint dries, you can go ahead and just erase any unwanted chalk mark with a little bit of water. So as I get towards this one right in through here, again, I'm going to leave myself a little bit of a visual space between the two. We'll cover that up later, but right now I just want to give myself, I don't want to get confused when I go to paint the details on these flowers. And if you can see some of your background through this, that's great. I did that intentionally. So now I'm washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to go ahead and make myself a custom orange for my mums. So I washed and dried my brush. I've magically already made it on my palette, so I'll show you how I got to it. So this is my orange, and I'm going to take you back to first grade paint art class where you just combine yellow and red and you get orange. So I just took a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red and I mixed them together and I made myself this beautiful orange. So I'll be using that as my base color for my mums. So this one, what I'm really going to do, I'm not going to paint it anything fancy. I'm just going to color in each circle, and I'm going to leave that tiny bit of space in between them so that way I can have that visual guide as I go into the more detailed painting process. So again, not doing anything really fancy here, just kind of leaving myself a little bit of a gap between the flowers. When I get to this one over here, you know, I'm just going to be a little cautious. I'm bumping into it. But if you bump into it too much and it's all too wet on you, then, you know, don't worry about it. These mums come in all assorted colors. So if yours don't come out exactly the same color as mine, that's okay. So again, no special brush stroke here because we're going to be adding tons and tons of detail onto these. I'm just trying to give myself some visual barriers from one mum to the next, so that way when I do go to paint them in, I'll have an idea of where I want to put my highlights and my shadows and my various colors, because again, we're going to have some fun when it comes to painting these mums. And then once I've got these done, I'm going to wash and dry my brush because I've got to do my my poinsettia. So just I think I'm pronouncing poinsettia wrong. I think it's poinsettia, but those who are plant and flower connoisseurs will know that better than me. But it's the way that it's spelled, so I think I'm pronouncing it wrong. But I've always pronounced it poinsettia. I know, too much information sometimes. So that's my mums here. I'm going to now wash and dry my brush and paint these flowers. And I'm going to do these with just red. So what is happening with some of these, especially this one, and well, all of them really, the colors are transparent or translucent, which means they're going to change because of the color that's underneath them. So when I do my red, it's going to look duller and darker because it has that blue behind it. I'm utilizing this as an advantage during my painting process, because I will use the different tones that get created as building blocks for dimensional elements for these flowers. So using that to your advantage when you're painting can really help to minimize the work that you do and maximize some great dimensional efforts and effects. So I'm just kind of, again, leaving a little bit of space between my leaves so I can know where I'm headed later. This one's going to be kind of overlapping that one. And these flowers too have can have a lot of space in between them when they're meeting that that center area. So even if you have little peekaboo spots of your background after we're done painting, that'll look nice too. But we'll be kind of disguising it with green leaves and kind of shadowy details. I'm going to just kind of dot this interior just so I can have a little bit of texture in through there, making sure that kind of matches somewhere in there. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Maybe I'll just start with my little dotting here and then just give myself this red, leaving myself little bits of visual cues so I don't get lost when I go to paint the full details later. And you know, some people like to leave these kind of spaces to help along so they don't get lost. Some people don't. So if you feel that leaving these spaces doesn't work for your process, you can certainly color it all in and then just work from your own visual kind of guide or thoughts to get these leaves and petals where you want them to go. And then I'm just going to color this little section in with some red paint. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your large brush away, take out your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat for our stems and our leaves. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm using green and brown paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to establish where I want some stems to go, and then we'll put some leaves and we'll be done with this step. So I'm going to put green and brown on my brush at the same time. I'm going to use green and brown for my stems, and then I'll use just green for my leaves. So I'm going to have a couple of stems, or one stem coming off of here, one or two stems. There is 2 flowers, so I should probably have 2 stems. So I'm just going to kind of pick a spot in through here where I think a stem would make sense. And I'm using a good amount of paint so that way I can kind of really just have a nice heavy quantity and it covers pretty well. We'll be doing some highlights and shadows in a little bit, but this will get me started. I'm thinking maybe there's 2 heads that come off of this stem. I'm going to leave it the way it is. Then I'm going to put a couple of stems coming out of these guys in through here like this. And again, I still have just the green and brown on my brush. Maybe this one goes a little sideways like that. I'm going to have these little just kind of skinny stems for these guys over here. We're going to have leaves coming right off the bottom of these flowers. So I'm just doing a whole bunch of vertical kind of lines for the impression of some stems for that. This one I'm not going to have stems because my leaves are going to be covering almost where a stem would go. So then I'm going to just wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up just green paint. So I'm using green for my leaves, and for this type of flower, they just have these long, kind of thick, skinny leaves, I guess, like this. And I'm going to have another one kind of coming up in through here. And what I like to do, I like to kind of push my brush to make that piece wider. I can start nice and slender up at the top, and then sometimes you can just push your brush to get the width of a particular piece that you're looking for. So like in through here, maybe I'll start nice and skinny up in through here, and then as I come down, I can just push my brush nice and firm, and that's going to give me a a wider kind of line. This one I'm not doing any leaves on. This one's gonna have little leaves all along. So I'm gonna start up top and just kind of give myself the essence of some leaves kind of popping out the other side. It's okay if you bump into your flowers at this point because we're gonna be doing lots of details on them, so don't fear bumping into them. Even like if you want to stick some kind of going behind them, maybe behind, you know, just to add a bit of green back there, that's totally fine. I'm going to do a couple kind of coming up in this area over here, and you don't have to put them everywhere, but just little pops of them coming in and out is totally fine. And then at the bottom I'll put some kind of bigger ones so they take up a little bit more real estate in through here, and it'll make them look like they're a little bit closer to us. And they're just kind of these, they're kind of wide at the base, and then they just point a little bit at the tip, something like this. I'll have them overlapping these little guys in through here. And again, we'll be doing more details where we'll get them to look more realistic going in underneath those flowers in a little bit. Just kind of get this one on in through here, and then maybe a little tip of one in through here. Nothing fancy, just something like that. So then my big guys over here, these have the leaves are in essence the same size as the red ones that we did, so they're just kind of behind them and in a similar shape. So I'm just going to kind of go partially up these two and then bring myself down the tip of this one in through here, and then just paint it in with the green color. We'll be making these more identifiable as the correct kind of color for this flower when we go to do the details later. I'm going to do another one kind of sitting behind this one like this. Maybe we just kind of see the edge of it, and you can go right up or right over right over the red section. This one's going to sit behind this one, so again, if you want to leave yourself a little visual gap, go right ahead. You can clearly go right up to the red area. You won't lose your identity there. You'll be able to modify that. I am on this one going to put a little bit of this green in between these the red sections, because the leaves really are below and behind, so you can certainly tap in a little bit of green behind there. I'm going to do some up here, again same size, similar size as the red ones, only that you can sit them behind them. So maybe we'll do one over in through here like this, and again I'll put a little bit of this green in the center of that flower too. I think I'm going to have a big one kind of coming out over here, and this one's going to be kind of tucked behind my mom petals or my mom flower head. And then we'll just adding these overlapping pieces, like this mom is going to overlap this leaf. Those are the little nuances that are really going to give lots of dimension and depth to the painting. So I'm going to have one kind of behind these red sections in through here, again just to kind of stay true to the color palette and make it look like it's got, you know, a leaf sitting behind these two red ones. So just utilizing that color to provide those kind of details. And then I'm going to put some green a little bit in through this center area, so when we go to add those details, we've got more to work with. And then I think maybe a little bit over behind here, maybe a little bit more in through here. And then we're going to use the our large brush for the next step. So once you get this done, you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint a border at the top of the canvas. I'm going to be using my large brush. The color I'm going to use is white. You don't even need to do this step if you think that you're going to enjoy this vibrancy of this. I thought it would just be nice to put a nice kind of halo or separator of a nice bright, maybe sunshiny kind of atmosphere at the top. So I'm going to be using white, and what I'm going to do is my brush is pretty darn dry, and I'm going to be using like a dry brush technique where I'm just going to kind of put the white up and then just softly rub it down in between these sections. So it'll give it almost like a border of sorts. So teeny tiny bit of white paint on my brush. I'm even going to tap it off on my paper towel to make sure I don't have much. I can always add more paint to the equation, but I'm going to start with very little on my brush, and then I'm just going to kind of bring it down and just kind of manipulate it in these arcing type of sections of sorts to give myself this pretty border all around each of my sections. And if you run into trouble and you're like, oh my God, I had too much paint on my brush and I totally made it too white, just give it a minute, let it dry. You can always bring back that original color and then just try it again. So I'm just kind of rubbing it at the top of the canvas and then just bringing it down a little bit in each section to give myself that pretty border around. I just bumped into my leaf a little bit. That's okay too, because I'm going to be painting that leaf in a minute with its details as well. So if I painted a little bit on top of that, so be it. And then if you want more, you just keep adding it until it is as bright as you want it to be. It will fade a little bit darker when it dries just because of the colors that are underneath it. It takes on those colors. So if you're going about it and you're like, I want it a little bit brighter, just keep adding that white until you've got it as bright as you want. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this pretty border done, it's like angelic kind of border done, you can put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our stems and our leaves. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors I'm using are green, black, brown, white, yellow, and maybe some orange too. So what I'm really going to do is just go for little quick highlights and shadows to give each piece a little bit of dimension. So on this stem here, I'm going to start with a little bit of black and brown on my brush at the same time, so I can add a bit of a shadow up at the top of my stem. So this is going to give it a lot of dimension up in through there. And then if I wanted any little shadows on between my my leaves, I can just stick a little bit of that black and brown down in through there, maybe down along here, and then I'm going to pick up my green, my original green, my green oxide, just to make sure I have a good coverage on these leaves and my stem, and then I will add a bit of a highlight. So what I like to do is a lot of times I will add my shadows. I will make sure my mid-tone is fully executed and blends into those shadows, and then I'm going to add my highlight. So my highlight, I'm putting yellow, green, and white. So deep yellow, green, and white are going on my brush at the same time. I'm just going to add a little bit of a highlight where I want that piece to pop out a little bit. So if I want it to look like it is having a round type shape to it, I can just put a little bit of highlight in through there. If I want this little edge to pop out a little bit and look like maybe the sunshine is kissing it a little bit, I'll put a little bit over there. If I want this little tip to look like it's got some sunshine on it, I just put my highlight in through there. So with leaves and stuff, they're really fun to just kind of explore where you want the part to pop out. Like if I want this one to look like it's kind of curved over, I can put my highlight right in here, and that's going to make it look like it's bent or it's got a little bit of movement to it. So something like that. So that works for me. That looks nice and dimensional. So I'm going to move over to this one. This one doesn't really need much at all. So a little bit of black and brown on my brush just to get right up at the where it's meeting the flower up in through here. I'm bumping into the flower a little bit just so I make sure that I get good coverage. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put my green oxide back on my brush just to make sure that I've got this fully colored in and then I'll pop on a tiny bit of a highlight. I don't really need much on these guys because they're so underneath the other flower, but yellow, green, and white are going on my brush. Maybe a little bit of a pop on this, we'll just call it on the left side, something like that. And of course you don't have to do yours exactly as mine. I'm just kind of giving a little bit of shape and contrast to them. So I'm going to go ahead and do my stems here. So again, I think I'm just going to hit these stems with black, brown, and green at the same time, so I can get just some nice darkness up underneath where they're going underneath those underneath the leaves. So just something like this will give me a little bit of contrast in through there. Wipe my brush off, just pick up a little bit of green. Oops, I think I need to get a little bit of that black off of my brush. So a little bit more green on my brush. And I'm just doing this so I can make sure I have full coverage. Again, like we were talking about on the other one, you could certainly use more brown if you wanted to. I'm just doing that so I can get some good representation. You can see the brown underneath it still, so that looks good. So then I'm going to do my leaves, and how I'm going to tackle these is I'm just going to put some shadows where they are closest to the flowers, and then I'll pop some little highlights on the edges. So brown and black are going to be my shadow makers, and I'm going to just kind of tuck these dark little shadows up into the flowers, as well as if I want any of these leaves to set, like if I want this one to look like it's underneath that one, I can put a little bit of a shadow right in between there, and that will separate these two from one another. So brown and black, and I don't have a lot on my brush, just a little bit. I'm just kind of tucking it under the flower itself, and then just kind of bringing it out in through here. Maybe this little guy underneath here has a little bit of a shadow. That's looking pretty good. Maybe a little shadow on this one as it's going underneath that flower, like that. And then I'll just put little shadows all around these guys in through here, so they look like they're kind of just nestled behind the flower heads themselves. So these little bits of contrast are what is going to make it look really three-dimensional and look like you've got, you know, the leaves are set behind or just kind of peeking out from the edges of the flowers. So that's looking pretty good. And you could even, you know, I'm thinking maybe just a little bit of darkness in through here. We're going to put darkness in between our flowers when we go ahead and do that, but that looks pretty good for that. I'm going to wash and dry my brush so I can put some little highlights on the leaves. I'm not going to do anything to those stems because they seem to be fine for me. So I'm going to pick up some yellow, green, and white. And if you want, you can certainly pre-mix yourself a light green, but I'm just picking up yellow, green, and white. Actually, this is where I'm going to use my orange. I'm picking up a touch of orange as well, so it looks more autumny. So I picked up yellow, green, white, and orange. And I'm just going to add these little bits of highlights onto my, my leaves as they're coming out. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of my green right now so I can make sure that they are kind of blended in with the shadow. So yellow, green, orange, and white, and any combination thereof. And I'm really just kind of highlighting these little tips so that way, or giving them their own kind of identity so they can set themselves apart from the flowers themselves, and you can just kind of keep manipulating. I'm not doing any detail on them. I'm really just kind of pulling my brush in a direction that maybe I feel the veins would go in of that particular little leaf, but I'm just looking to give that color a nice representation. The flowers on this section are really the star of the show, not the leaves. When we go to do the poinsettias, those leaves are a little bit more important than these ones are, but these ones I'm just trying to get a color to them. So yellow, orange, green, and white on my brush at the same time. Give myself this pretty little highlight and a little bit of a textural effect. Maybe up here they get a little bit more of the white with them so they can look like they're more towards the top of the atmosphere, so to speak. Picking up just a touch more green to make sure my mid-tone is fully executed and maybe blends in with that shadow. And then I'll go ahead and work on my, and these, again, these little guys over here, we don't need much to them, just a little bit of fun color to make them represent leaves. And then I'm going to go ahead and wash and dry my brush for my poinsettia. So this is where I'm going to be using kind of some deeper tones. I'm going to use green and black as my kind of shadow maker, as opposed to my brown and black. So I have green and black. These leaves can really be like a real dark green. So I'm going to be using my green and black to kind of set the stage for that. And I kind of would like to have a little bit of detail with the veins in them as well. So I'll kind of identify where I want that center of the leaf to be, if I can. I mean, there's going to be areas where you just want it to be dark, or you just want it to have a little bit of highlight on it. But if you can, at any place, kind of give yourself the essence of some of those veins, that's going to make it look a little bit more realistic. So I just picked up a little bit more black and green, and I'm going to do the same thing for here. So maybe this center kind of goes like that. I want it to be nice and dark as it's going underneath that the red leaf, and then I can just kind of pull this out like this. I'll add the green and some highlight to it in a minute, but right now just kind of add in these shadowy areas, green and black, again back on my brush to, or still on my brush, to give myself some dark little spots in through here. So these flowers are also have these, you can see parts of the stems in the middle part here where the petals and leaves kind of all converge. So I'm just going to put these little black little lines in through there, maybe a little bit of darkness in through here. Going to go up into this one with my green and my black, just kind of pulling out maybe some darkness and adding, you know, some shadowy type of darkness wherever I feel that it's suitable. So underneath this one looks pretty good to me, and still green and black on my brush. I'm going to go ahead and add some nice darkness into here. I think this one would probably come up in this direction. So something like this. And again, yours may turn out way different than mine, but this will give you a good start to it. And then I think I want these ones up here a little bit lighter, but I don't think I would see much or need much of the little veins, but we'll just pop in a touch to make my painterly eye happy. Put in a couple of little dark marks in through here, and then I'm going to, maybe a little bit dark over here. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush so I can put my little highlights on those leaves. So wash and dry my brush. I'm going to start with just green so I can make sure that I've got a nice kind of transition from that dark area to what I'm going to have as the light kind of tips. So I'm almost just painting over some of that black in order to just make sure that this mid-tone is fully executed. And I'll do that to the ones I feel it needs it. So this one needs it a little bit. And green, my green is transparent or translucent, so it can see those dark things underneath. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of green and white to my brush. Tiny, tiny bit of white to give these little bits of, and not, I'm going to proceed with caution. So just little tiny bits of green and white to add just these little highlights to some of these leaves. I don't need to do much, just little tiny bits to pop out those corners a bit. Gonna go up here with my green just to make sure again that it meets that shadowy area. Do the same thing to the top ones. I'll hit all these ones kind of at once. So again, just green oxide right now, making sure that mid-tone works with my shadowy area. And even if you miss little spots, like I just noticed I missed a little spot, don't worry. We've got the red leaves coming that will help to hide anything or help to connect anything that might have been missed. Now I'm going to pick up a touch of green and just a teeny tiny touch of white. So just a teeny tiny touch of white, and this is going to give me my little highlights to these leaves. So just a little bit in through here, a little bit in through here, and then maybe just a teeny tiny bit. So I want the leaf to appear to be dark, but I still want it to have a little bit of life to it. So that's where I bring these little highlights in. And then we're going to use this small brush for the next step. So once you've got your leaves and your stems all nice and done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our daffodils. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are yellow, white, brown, and perhaps a little bit of black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding shadows and highlights in order to give it form and to give it the information where the light source is. So our light source is above. So we'll have some highlights on the top. We'll have some highlights on the petals to make them look nice and floppy, and then we'll finish it with some little stamen in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply my shadows first. I'm going to be using a tiny bit of brown paint on my brush. I'm going to be adding shadows underneath the bell part of the flower, as well as a couple little strategic highlights between my petals and inside the bell as well. So I'll start up in through here. I've got a teeny tiny bit of brown paint on my brush. This is where we get to start to get rid of our separating lines. So this is just a teeny tiny bit of brown paint. You can even add a little bit of water on your brush or liquid medium to just get it to spread out a little bit. So this is going right underneath that bell. I'm going to put some in the middle of my flower too. So teeny tiny bit of brown just to give me a little bit of darkness in the middle of my flower. So something like that. Doesn't have to be perfect, just a little bit of darkness. I'm going to put some down at the bottom in through here because I feel like my flower, the bottom part is going to be right in through here of the bell, something like this. And I'm using very little bit of paint. We will add highlights and get it to blend in a minute. Let's see, maybe a little bit on this side. This is going to be a petal coming out in through here, so maybe just a little bit up in through there. Then that one I think is just going to be highlights, so we're going to move on to this one. So again, just a tiny bit of brown paint. I'm going to put a dark area in the middle where I want there to be the darkest area of the flower. So something like that. We'll get that going. I'm going to put a tiny bit, and I'm stressing a tiny bit because you really don't need a lot on top of this yellow. The brown will really give you a nice shadow, and I think I need a little bit more than that. And if you're scared of it, you can always add, again, a bit of liquid medium. That's what I'm using, or I'm using water on my brush, but a liquid aid will help you to spread that paint out, so you can put it on and then just kind of blend it out into the yellow itself. So that way it's not too bold, but you still have that shadow on there. I'm going to put a little bit down on this bottom left-hand side in through here. So this is going to make it look like it's kind of got a little dip in there. And then I'm just going to put tiny little shadows maybe underneath some of these petals, like this one is casting a shadow on there. Maybe this one is, casting a little shadow here, or this one's kind of dipping down into behind the flower, something like that. Maybe this one's got a little bit down at the bottom. So you don't have to do much because when we go to add the highlight onto these flowers, that's going to give them more form as well. So that's looking pretty good to me. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to start adding my highlights. So this is going to be yellow and white. You could, I suppose, use your light yellow that you had here, but I'm just going to use yellow and white on my brush at the same time to create my highlighted areas. So again, this is going to be kind of on the bell. It'll be where you want it to pop out the most, and then areas on your on your petals. You'll also want to blend it with your mid-tone, which was just yellow. So right now I'm going to put a little bit of my highlight up in through here. So this will be my edge of my flower like this. So again, just yellow and white. I'm going to put maybe a bright edge over here. You could even at this point, if you wanted to bump out any more of these ripples along the way, you can certainly do that. That's going to make for a nice flowy kind of edge to your flower, and then just get it to blend in with that mid-tone. So if you have to, like right now I'm just picking up yellow, and that's going to get it to blend in and make sure that I have all of that area painted in. So yellow and white can give you your highlight. So I think I want a nice highlight over here, yellow and white, and then you can get it to blend out into your deep yellow color. So this is yellow and white right in through here, and then you can wipe your brush off, pick up some of your deep yellow, and just get it to blend in. This is where you get your chalk marks to go away. You can get it to blend right down into those little crevices. I think I want a little bit, not much, but a little bit in through here. And I also just want to make sure it blends in. So I'm just picking up my deep yellow. So right now I am flipping back and forth between a combination of yellow and white. So the deep yellow and white. So where I need it to be a little bit darker, I'm using more deep yellow. Where I want it to be a little bit lighter, I'm using more white. So I'm putting yellow and white on my brush right now. I'm going to go ahead and get my bright edge to this beautiful flower right here. So yellow and white, and I'm heavy-handed with the white when I want it to really scream, the sunshine is touching me right here. So especially along these edges. And of course I want to make sure that I've got all of my chalk mark covered and that I can't see any of my background. So that's where I'm taking my time, making sure that I'm bringing it as far as I need to bring it. And then once I've got this highlight on here, I just wipe my brush off and I'm picking up more of my deep yellow. And then I'll just get it to blend in. So this is making this whole top edge really bright and feel like the sunshine is just glowing, making it glow as the beautiful spring daffodils that are around my house. So I'm going to just continue again, yellow and white on my brush and any combination thereof. So again, when you want it to be a little bit brighter, just pick up a touch more white. And I'm going for, you know, my petals are going to be brighter where I want them to pop out a little bit more. This back one in through here, the back one I'll make a little bit darker. So I just picked up my without washing my brush. I haven't washed my brush yet. I picked up my deep yellow, making sure that I got all these little crevices so I can't see my background. That makes my eye happy. And then I'll just kind of work my way forward. So I've got this one in through here. So yellow with a little bit of white. I'm going to put a bit of a highlight in through here just to give it some form and make sure you can see it in front of the leaf that's next to it, or the petal that's next to it. So yellow and white again to make my edges. Now I'm getting into my smaller petals. I can probably tackle a couple of them at the same time. So yellow and white just to get these to be, I guess that one's growing on me. Now it's going to be right in front of the other one. And you know, if you're going about this and you know, you do something and you're like, wow, that was much more than I thought. Again, just let it dry. You know, this one I'm going to put a big highlight in through here so it looks like this petal's flopped over. I'll do the same thing over here. Lots of white, very little yellow on my brush right now, and same thing with over in through here. And then I can just pick up, you know, my deep yellow with a little bit of white and just get this to blend into the main section of that petal. And I work pretty quickly, so if you need to just tackle one leaf at a time or one petal at a time, feel free to do so. But sometimes because I work quickly, I can tackle a couple of petals at the same time like I just did there. While my paint is drying, I can maneuver it to where I want it to go with that blend, but you might find that just working on one petal at a time works for you. So whatever method works. And then I just picked up a little bit more deep yellow to make sure that everything blends. I think this needs to kind of get tucked in here because I can see some of my background. So I'm just making sure that I've got it fully executed on the whole thing. So even if, like right here, I just wanted to paint my deep yellow over that to get a more vibrant yellow, if you paint an area white and then paint your deep yellow over it, it's going to have that deep yellow at its truest color. Because when it's on top of the pink, it's a little bit duller, which is where we're getting this darker version. So if you want that yellow to be brighter, just paint white underneath it, and then you can paint the deep yellow right on top of it. And then I just kind of keep working my highlights until I've got my flowers to pop out as much as I want. So you can keep fiddling with this. Oh, I got to do my little stamen. So let me just kind of make this area as bright as I want. I feel like I wanted that a little bit brighter, bring back a touch more of the white in through here, but let me just do my stamens too. So just give me a second to get this nice and bright. I'm just elevating these parts of the petals that kind of curve over. So again, and giving a little bit more sunshine to these tips so you can really see them popping out. And you know, if you felt that you needed to sink anything back further and put deeper shadows, you can totally do that kind of stuff in order to give it a little bit more dimension. Like I feel like I can't see the edge of this here, so I'm wiping my brush off and picking up a tiny bit of brown paint just to kind of give myself a little bit more contrast between the leaf and the main bell section itself. Or even like in through here, I want this to, I can't really see it well, so a little bit more yellow and white will kind of get this whole petal to pop out a little bit more. So you just, if you can't see it in front of something or it's losing the definition, you just need more contrast to it, either lighter or darker. So I'm going to go ahead, maybe a little more brightness up here first before I put my stamens. So a little bit more sunshine on this area in through here will make me happy. As it dried a little bit too dark for my liking, so I'm just kind of elevating it a little bit more with a little bit more lightness, and that's how I go about it. So for my stamens, I'm just going to do a wash and dry my brush, and I'm putting a touch of black and brown on my brush, and I'm just going to do these little kind of stems of sorts, teeny tiny bit of paint on my brush, just getting this to go right into a little crevice and then just bring them out in this little chaotic manner, and then do the same thing up and through here. So you can kind of, if you don't feel like you know where the center is, you can always make it a little bit darker too, where you want to kind of see it go in, and then you can pull up more of these little kind of pointy pieces like this. So once I've got that, then I just kind of, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white on my dirty brush, so just a teeny tiny bit of white paint, give myself a couple little highlights on those pieces, so just a itty bitty bit of white paint, and just kind of swipe it down a couple of them, little bit of white paint, swipe it down, and now I can put some little dots. So I'm not going to wash my brush, I'm just picking up black, brown, and white at the same time, and I'm going to just do a series of little kind of chaotic polka dots at the top of here. Maybe a little bit more black and brown just to give myself a little good diversity in here. And then once you've got this done, we're going to use our, actually use our medium brush for the next step. So you can put this small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our lupine flowers. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are white, purple, brown, and black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up at the top of each flower with white, and I'm going to be kind of dotting it in a similar pattern or in a similar brush stroke that we did the first time. They're going to be bright at the top and dark at the bottom. So I'm going to start with white paint on my brush, and I'm going to when I do this, I'm not going to be painting over all of this background. I'm just going to kind of sporadically feel and make this as if it is kind of intermingled with them, something like this. So this is going to give us that three-dimensional kind of look to it. So once I get right about here, or kind of start running out of my white paint, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm going to pick up purple with it. So what's going to happen is it will naturally kind of get lighter or darker and darker as it's coming down. So I'm going to pick up my purple again and just kind of proceed with I'm not picking up any more white paint, I'm just picking up purple. So this is going to intermingle with the white that was on my brush, and it's going to allow me to get this to go darker and darker as it comes down. And because I'm not painting the whole thing, it's allowing for those different tones from underneath to show up, which is fabulous. So now that I'm down about this far, this is where I'm going to start picking up a little bit of brown with my purple. So brown and purple, and this is going to get it to go darker and darker. I'm going to go right up next to my other flower in through here and just kind of dot it in these little, they remind me of like the shape of little corn on the cobs, something like that. And I'm going to go right up next to that. I'm going to pick up some more of my purple, just make sure I've got some good coverage in through here. And now I'm going to start picking up purple, black, and brown. So as I come down here, and again, I'm going to be really cautious to not overpaint it because I want to be able to see those other colors within it. So that's looking pretty good to me. I've got nice transition from the light to the dark. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush and do the same thing on the other flower. So washing and drying my brush, I'm going to start with just white on my brush up at the top. I'm going to give myself a few intermingled with that purple, or with the purple behind it, like this. Now I'm going to pick up white with my purple. So I've got white and purple on my brush right now. This one I want to make sure that you can see the difference between this flower and this flower. So I'm going to bring this lighter tone a little bit further down on this one than I did on the other one. So again, I've got white and purple on my brush right now. So that way I can kind of intermingle this area in through here so you can see the difference. And just going to kind of pop these on here. Now I'm picking up just purple, and I know this flower is going to kind of reside in front of this, so that's okay. And now I'm going to start picking up purple and brown. So purple and brown, bring this down in through here. I think I still need more lightness right here, so back to just purple. Make sure that I can see the difference between these two flowers right in through here. Maybe a little bit more white. I just want to make sure that I can see the difference between them. So I just picked up a little bit of the purple and white. And if you're, fearful of blending your colors too much, just do quick little dabs. Don't smush it in and roll it around. Just kind of quick little jabs will work. I washed my brush because as I was getting into here, I had white, purple, and brown on my brush, and I felt like I was muddling it a little bit, so I washed and dried my brush. Now I'm going to pick back up my brown and my purple to get going down towards this bottom darker area. So brown and purple, and then in a minute I will start picking up that little bit of black as well. So I think that's going to happen now. Touch of black, brown, and purple, just to get this little bottom edge to be nice and dark. Make it look like it's down in the shadows a little bit, and then let it dry and see if there's any little, fiddling or tweaking that you feel would be necessary to make yours look as, vibrant as you want. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this large brush or medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our mums. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, orange, red, yellow, and white. If I use any other colors, I'll let you know, but I think those are the ones I'm going to make. So mums come in a lot of different varieties of colors anywhere. I think they even have white mums, but where I'm from, the mums in autumn are very autumn-esque colors. So yellows, rusty colors, oranges, reds, maroons, all those really warm, yellowy, reddish, orangey, brownish kind of tones. So we're going to go for a variety of that, probably predominantly orange, but we'll use different hues of other colors. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to kind of close off all of these gaps. I'm going to be using orange and brown on my brush at the same time, that custom orange that we created. And I'm really just going to kind of skirt it in between these areas. I don't really want any firm lines, so as I'm doing this, I'm kind of using like a real sketcherly type of brush stroke to get it in these gaps, but without doing a firm line. So this is allowing me to almost start the shadow making between each flower. So obviously some of the flowers are going to be in front of others, which will have highlights, but the ones that are going to be sitting behind, this is going to help start that creation process and give us a little bit more dimension. So again, I have orange and brown on my brush, and I'm using this real light sketcherly type of brush stroke to kind of fill in these little bits of gaps, and some are darker than others, some are lighter because I'm using two colors on my brush at the same time. So now that I've got my gaps filled in, making sure I've got all of the ones that I want, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some centers for some of these flowers. So these flowers have very tight petals and thousands of petals on them. So you can, and some of them have different colored centers. You can have like a orange one with a yellow center, or you can have a red one with a black center, or a yellow one with a black center. They come with different kinds of centers, and some of them the petals are so tight you don't even see the center. So I'm just going to give it a couple of different varieties for some of the centers. So I didn't wash my brush, but I'm going to pick up black, brown, and orange. Black, brown, and orange are on my brush, and I'm going to create a couple of little dark areas for a few of them. So this has got black, brown, and orange. Maybe we'll have one there. Maybe we'll have one in through here. And I'm just polka dotting it so it'll give it the appearance of being more of a centered texture as opposed to the petals that we'll be doing in a minute. And I'm not doing it directly in the middle. Like this one could be along the side. Maybe this one is kind of in the inside, in through here. And maybe that's all I do. Maybe we got one more in through here. And you don't have to do them all. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to start making some petals. So my petals are going to be predominantly orange, but I don't necessarily want every single one to look exactly the same. And if I was to just paint orange on top of this, it's just going to look the same as what I did the first round. So I need to change it up a little bit. So you can use orange with almost anything. I'm going to use orange with red. I'll use orange with yellow and white, and I'll do some white highlights or lighter highlights in a bit, but right now I'm just going to kind of get the petals in shape. So I'm going to start with orange and red on my brush at the same time at a good amount. And what I'm going to do is we need more red because we can't even see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give myself these little almost circular type of marks around that flower. So this one I know is kind of hiding underneath here, so I'm just going to kind of dab in that color so I can kind of see it. I'm going to use this color for a couple of them. So I have orange and red on my brush, and I'm utilizing kind of this skirting brush stroke in a circular manner to give myself the essence of thousands or hundreds of little petals around these flowers. And you can overlap the colors. I think I'll do another orange one or reddish one up in through here, something like this. And again, I'm just kind of skirting it around the edges or around the whole thing. Now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm going to pick up some orange and yellow. So orange and yellow, and I probably have a little bit of the red remnants on my brush and doing the same thing. But this is not enough of a contrast, so I definitely need some white in the mix when I'm using this yellow, I'm guessing. So I'm going to use yellow, orange, and a touch of white on my brush. Yellow, orange, and white are on my brush. That was not light enough for me and you weren't able to see it. So I need more contrast, and in order to do that, I just picked up a little bit more white in it. Oops, I just had green on my brush. Green, I don't want green flowers. There we go. So yellow, orange, and white. Yellow, orange, and white. And I'll do a few with this color combination. And of course, this is going to, you know, give us that textural element for the petals. So yellow, orange, and white is what I've got. And you don't have to do them all. This is just kind of steering the ship into getting a variety of tones within our flowers. So yellow, orange, and white, and you can overlap it. I'm going to be in a second using almost white as a base coat because I'm going to want some of these to be really vibrant with my orange. So in order to do that, I'm going to show you a trick that I was talking about on my daffodils, which is putting a base coat of white before, or put a white layer and then add the orange on top of it. So I'm not going to wash my brush right now, but I'm going to pick up white and I'm going to do a couple of these with very bright petals. So they're going to be almost too bright right now, and then once it dries a little bit, I will pop on my vibrant orange color. So that way you'll be able to see, it'll take on, because it has the light base underneath it, you'll be able to see that orange color even more. So again, you can see with this white paint, you can obviously see the brush stroke a little bit more. Or if I wanted more red in this one, I could put a couple of these white marks. Maybe I want this side to be brighter on this one, so I can add some of these white marks, let them dry for a minute, and then add a more vibrant color on top of them. So that's what I'm doing right now, is putting in a couple of real bright white marks so I can use those as my highlight structure, or making a vibrant color with making a vibrant color appear on top of this dark background. So that's looking pretty good, maybe a little bit up in through here. So I just was using white on there on my dirty brush and letting myself kind of run out of paint. So I was having different intensities of that white as I was going through the process. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick up some of my orange. So I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel. I picked up some of my orange, and you'll notice now if I go right over these white spots, you're going to see that orange more vibrantly because it has a white base underneath it. Oh, these are still a little wet, so we'll let those dry for a minute. And maybe I've got a little bit more red in here, and now you can see this red will pop even more. And I'm leaving some of those, you know, the little orange spots in between, so that way we have different, you know, colors within that flower. And so it looks very autumn-esque. I just picking up some orange now, this is what I'm talking about, putting this orange on top of that white. You can see how it brightens it right up because that white base is underneath it. And then I just kind of keep fiddling. So I'm gonna make some of these, maybe I'm gonna pick up yellow and white. I feel like I want to have some yellow ones in here. So yellow and white, just to get that more vibrant color in there, I guess. And again, you can have these whatever color you want. They're just, you know, so warm in their tones, but you can have vibrant colors to them. I'm thinking a little bit more yellow in through here, and I just kind of keep playing with these layers of colors. Even if I want to put yellow on top of an orange flower, like now I'm feeling like I want this one to be yellow because I like the yellow over there. So I'm just going to keep adding these little bits of circular brush strokes to fill in the flowers, just allowing for these different values. If you feel like your shadows in between need to be intensified a bit, you can do that as well, or just bring those edges of your petals over far enough so it kind of abuts that shadow enough so it doesn't look unfinished. So those are other little tricks to just kind of making sure that it looks done. And then just fiddle, let it dry, see if there's any changes that you want. I think I need to attend to this area here. So I'm just wiping my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a little bit more brown and orange just to make sure. This looked a little unfinished in through here, so I just wanted to make sure that I've got all of my shadows fully executed and that they blend in well with the neighboring petals and stuff. So just kind of tapping in those little dash type of marks. This is more of an impressionistic type of way to do these flowers. So just let them be loose, let them have texture to them. And then once you've got them done, fiddle with them all you want. We're going to use this same small brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our poinsettia flowers. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm going to use are red, white, black, green, and yellow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tackle my red leaves similarly to the way that we did the green leaves, which would be kind of adding our little dark areas wherever there needs to be shadows, and then we add the kind of essence of veins and do the highlighted areas, and then we'll add the little center to the flower. So I'm going to start with red and black on my brush at the same time, and I'm going to start in the center of my flower and give myself the information for each kind of petal. So I start in through here, and then I'm going to just kind of bring it out where I feel the center of it would be, similar again to how we did the green one. And then once I've got that on there, I can just kind of pull it out in the direction that I feel those veins of sorts would be going. And you don't need a lot of black paint. The black again will easily take over, so I do recommend, you know, just starting slowly and then adding it as you see fit. So I've got that on in through there, and then maybe just pull it a little bit away. I'm going to add, this one's going to have a lot of highlight on it, so I'm not going to do too much for this little center or the darkness of it, the shadowy part of it. We'll add some brightness in a minute. Let's see, this one in through here, I think I'm going to just kind of pull this out like this. We've got this one coming in through here, so I'm going to close this little gap. Just pull a little bit out like that. Loading my brush again, a little bit more red, because again, black will go far away. You don't really need much black on your brush at all. So a little bit of black in through there with my red, of course, a little bit in through here. So I'm just kind of pulling it out just a smudge. I'm going to go up top and do the top ones. Again, black with red on my brush, pulling it out from the center, making sure I close any gaps that I feel are necessary to close. I will do this one in through here. I don't think I'd even see part of that one. Maybe a little bit that way. Maybe a little bit on this one coming down this way. And then we've got this one. Again, just coming from the center and just giving myself a little bit of darkness in that petal where I feel it needs it. I'm going to wash and dry my brush now, and I'm going to pick up red. So red is going to be my mid-tone and my connector color to the light and the dark. So I'm right now just kind of going back where I put the darkest areas, making sure that the red blends in, bringing that red all the way to my edges. Again, make sure I have good coverage. The red is great because the more you put on, the brighter it will get, because it will eventually stop showing the color that's underneath it. But it may take a couple of layers to get there. We're gonna help it out in a minute with some white, but right now I'm just putting the red on there, and I am using a brush stroke in the direction that I feel the veins would go. So I am kind of pulling it in a similar direction that we did the black in. When I get down to the edge, I'm just making sure I have good coverage. So I'm just filling in any little gaps I need to. Bring this down to the tip. Reshape the tip if you need to. So something like that. Fill in my gaps. Make sure it connects with that black or the darkness that you did. And then I'm going to just repeat that step. So I'm just, right now, just red paint. I'm making sure my whole leaf is painted in. If you bump into your mum like I just did, you can fill it in later. I'm going to close this gap in through here, making sure that I've got good coverage. These little guys over on the sides, you're probably not going to need to do much other than just paint them in with that second coat of red. What we're doing right now, again, is intensifying the vibrancy of that red. And if you still have chalk mark, like I have some chalk mark in through here, I will erase that with water after I'm fully done. And if you have little gaps in between here, that's great. That makes this flower even more reminiscent or more of a true flower, because they have those little gaps in between. Not all of them, but they do have those little gaps that you might see part of the background behind. Then again, I'm just going through one little section at a time, making sure I've got some good coverage on here, and where I feel it's important to use the brush stroke, a directional brush stroke, I certainly will, but on these littler ones, you most likely only just need to paint them in. On the bigger one that I did down here, it definitely behooved me to use a directional brush stroke, but on these littler ones, I'm really just making sure that I have a good coverage, that I go all the way up to the neighboring leaf or petal or whatever is next to it, so it looks like I have fully painted the whole thing. And then once I've got this second coat on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add little highlights. So my highlights are going to come from red and white. As you go through your highlight making process, you may find, depending on the color red that you are using, if you your red might turn very pink on you. And if that happens, you can counteract it with a little bit of yellow on your brush or within that paint as well. My red is pretty true red, so when I add white to it, it just looks like light red, but you might get very pink. So I'm going to add red and white to my brush right now. Just a teeny tiny bit of white, because the white is very powerful. And then I'm going to start adding my highlights. So this is going to be one of my brightest highlights in through here. So again, red and white. And my red underneath was still wet, so it's blending in nicely. You might find that, and I was using red on my brush as well. So if your red is dry underneath and you didn't have enough red on your brush, you can certainly add more red to the equation. So that's going to be a call on your part. And then I'm just going to get all of this to blend in along the edges. Where I want my leaf to pop out the most, I put more white. So I just put a little bit of red and white on my brush. I want this leaf to kind of pop out in through here. So I'm just using these curved type of brush strokes to get it to look the brightest where I feel I want that leaf to pop out the most. So red with a little bit of white. And if you don't push hard and you don't use a ton of paint, you can keep the control that you're in control. You dictate where these light spots go. And if you go too much, you just let it dry and then come back on top of it with a little bit more red. So I just put a little bit more white on my brush because I wanted this one to kind of pop out a little bit more. And I'm bringing it in the direction that I feel the veins of that flower would go, or of that petal or leaf, whatever you want to call it. So something like this. I'm thinking that this is working out. I'm going to put a little bit more red on my brush to get this to blend in a little bit. Yeah, that works. Something like that. Maybe a little bit in through here. And again, I'm proceeding slowly so I don't overpaint. This is one of those steps that if you don't go into each brush stroke with a thought, you might end up with everything looking the same. And so I just kind of proceed with each section I'm working on. Okay, where do I want this to pop out a little bit? So like this one, I want this one to, I want this one to be kind of bold. So maybe a little bit more goes on this one. And I just kind of bring it up in through here and maybe a little bit over on this side. And then if that's too light, just pick up a little bit more of your red and you can counteract it. So you can, steer it in your own, value that you want, but go into it with a plan. Like I want this one to have a little bit maybe on this tip in through here. So hardly any white is going with my red. And you just kind of put that little highlight on in through there to let that section of the leaf pop out. Maybe this little tip pops out a bit. So I've got my red plus my white. And then I just kind of I'm going to get these guys to be just a little bit darker. So this one pops out, or I'm keeping them a little bit darker. And then once you've got all of your leaves done, just going to hit these two up in through here. Maybe this one's got a little bit in through here and in through here. And once you've got these, your highlights done, we'll do a little bit of detail to the centers of the flower. So I'm just catching this last one in through here. Maybe this one kind of comes out like this. I need a little bit on this corner because I can see my green leaf through it. So I want to make sure that I hide that. That looks good. Maybe a little bit like this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tackle my centers of my flower. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to do green, yellow, and white and just kind of polka dotting it. So I'm picking up green, yellow to start, and I'm going to do some little polka dots with green and yellow. Do the same thing at the top, green and yellow, maybe a little bit more yellow on my brush, green and yellow. And you can overlap your flower part, your stems and stuff. So this is going to give it some green, some good dimension. And then I just picked up a little bit of white on my dirty brush to give myself some nice little dimensional polka dots in through here. And then fiddle with it as much as you want. Do any little adjusting entries you want, and entries, any little adjusting things, adjusting paintbrush strokes, and then you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to go bottom left on this one, and I'm signing mine with green. So I like to do my initials, but you could certainly do your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you'd like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very lively floral image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.